welcome to my first isolation interview with Adam Croft, no less. Hello, Adam.
Hello. Thank you. I didn't realise I was the first one. How about that?
You are. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And the good thing about asking famous people to do this is they can't give you the excuse that they were busy because you're at home.
Well, yes. Yeah, there is that. Although I must say, I've not noticed a whole lot of difference. I think I'm on day 40 at home now.
Oh, really?
And yeah, but then again, I don't really go anywhere. It would be nice to be able to go to the pub. That's about the only place I
Yes.
do go. But other than that, I've not noticed a huge amount of difference. So yeah, we're all doing okay here, I think. Obviously, I think
Good.
not knowing when the end will be is the only thing, the uncertainty about it. But no, that's the nature of the game, really.
Absolutely, and a writer's life is obviously a quite solitary one. I get that anyway, but I just wanted to do an intro because you have, I've known you for a long time now, and it's been so wonderful seeing your very quick, probably doesn't feel like it to you, but your massively quick trajectory to success. So for those of you who don't know and who've not have been living under a rock for the last 6 or 7 years, Adam Croft is probably one of the most successful independently published authors in the world, and also known as an indie author. So yeah, that's the kind of vernacular for it, isn't it? Indie.
It sounds cooler that way. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah. Indie sounds very cool. So one of the biggest selling authors of the past few years, having sold books in over 120 countries. So almost 2 million books sold to date. A podcaster extraordinaire, and has got a doctorate now as well. So you've been very busy. And
yeah, not a real one, but yes, I
no.
have. Yeah, one that I just had to turn up and collect and then put on the wall. But yeah, much easier than studying for 3 or 4 years, that's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So obviously, thank you so much for doing this. And obviously, your life as a writer is quite solitary, but you have had the most extraordinary career, and I feel very honoured because I've sort of seen you right at the beginning, just as you were becoming successful, and you've worked so hard for this, and nobody deserves success like you are having now. How does it feel? Are you still doing the pinch me moment?
Yes and no. It's not something I've ever really kind of thought about or accepted. I guess you kind of get new normals, don't you? And people say these things, but I don't really see it like that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm still kind of working from a spare room in my house, writing stories, and people are reading them. And from that point of view, the job doesn't really change. Things are still the same. There are more interviews and things like this, and other stuff has come of it, like the podcast and various media bits and bobs. But I guess the life of a writer stays much the same regardless. And yeah, it's great when more people are reading the books and more emails are coming in from people saying they're loving them, and for it to give me the security to be able to do that and do the things that I enjoy doing, that's brilliant. And obviously I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, you're right. It's taken a long time to build up to where things are. I've been writing now for publishing and had books out for about 10 years now nearly. And it was the 9th book that kind of kicked things off. So there's obviously a lot of stuff going on in the background and a lot of building up there before that kind of overnight rise, if you like. And I think publishing is one of those industries, like much of the arts, where you can be doing something for years and years, and whereas in most jobs your trajectory might kind of slowly creep up over the years. With something like writing, same as it is with music and acting, you can be doing it on a level for a long time, and then it suddenly just spikes. So you kind of end up at the same point at the same time, but there's no gradual rise. It's just it's suddenly overnight something seems to kick in and things start paying off.
The thing is, what I love about you is you're super modest and incredibly self-deprecating, and you haven't changed since I think I met you, gosh, back in 2015, about 5 years ago. Yeah, when you first came on my radio show, and we're both podcasters now. So it's interesting how things have evolved over the years as well. Community radio was such a big thing, and now podcasts are definitely the way forward. And we'll come to your podcast, which is phenomenal. I love it, and it's so successful. So yes, if I can get a quarter of the success that you've got, I'll be delighted. But your chemistry with Bob Dawes is undoubtedly what makes it work so well. But let's go back to the books, because I mean, say, incredible. So I'm just going to read out some of these things because you're too modest to do it. So to date, Adam has achieved seven Amazon store-wide #1 bestsellers in the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia. His 2015 worldwide bestseller, Her Last Tomorrow, became one of the best-selling books of the year, peaking at #12 in the combined paperback fiction and non-fiction chart. He also writes the Knight and Culver House crime thriller series, which I love as well. Really, just kind of like a Midsummer Murder type Morse thing. And they're going to be adapted as audio plays, starring some of the biggest British names in TV. Do we have any names yet?
No. We the audio plays were the Kempston Hardwick series. Actually, that was we did that with Bob a few years back, and yeah, talks are being had about doing some TV stuff as well. But that's such a
long, protracted process.
It is. I mean, someone gave me a piece of advice before I'd even kind of started out on this journey, which was, when talks about TV and film and things are going on, take it all in your stride and take it with a pinch of salt and say, this is great, but don't think that as soon as somebody comes knocking that you're going to be watching it on the telly in a fortnight, because it's not going to work that way. There's a lot of hoops to jump through before then, a lot of different places where it can fall down. And the advice I was given was to, until you're sitting there in your living room watching the credits roll, assume it's not going to happen. And anything that does happen is a bonus. And I guess that's the way I've always looked at it. I've gone into things not with low expectations in a pessimistic sense, but in looking at it with a view that I'm doing this to enjoy it, and anything good that comes of it, and any success that happens, and anything that spins off from that is great. But I've always said from the start that it doesn't matter what happens and what comes of it, because if I was living in a gutter in a cardboard box, as long as I could still write, I'd be not perfectly happy, but I'd rather do that than have a high-paying job that I hated and a miserable life. So I think writing, like much of the arts, is perhaps more of a calling than it is a job. And if you can make a job from it, then you never have to work another day in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a vocation, and as you say, if you're doing something you love, it doesn't feel like work. And but you do deserve your success, and nobody, as I say, has worked harder than you as well. What else was going to say? Tell us the J.K. Rowling story, because this is a great story.
Well, it's a bit of a weird one, because I was this was in February 2017, and I had a book out called Only the Truth, which hit #1 store-wide, Amazon, UK, US, all over the place, and did really well. But about that time, in fact, when I heard that it had hit #1, somebody sent me a message to tell me. I was in the hospital with my wife for one of the last checkups before we had our first child. So obviously I had other things in my mind. It was a massive time for me, but it kind of didn't really sink in at the time. And somebody sent me a picture saying, look, here's Amazon's author rankings as well, because they kind of rank the most widely read authors at any given time. And at that point, they had me listed at #1 as the most widely read author in the world at that moment, and J.K. Rowling was at #2. And it's a screenshot I've saved, which is great. But again, it's something that didn't really sink in, and it seems bizarre saying it, but it was kind of like, oh, that's nice, because my head was in a completely different place. I was in the maternity ward and waiting for my son to be born. So it was only really probably months after that it really kicked in, that had happened. It was quite a bizarre time, and I think it just goes to show that there are bigger things in life, I think.
And yes, there's nothing bigger than the birth of your child. I mean,
exactly,
all the success that you've had, you wouldn't swap it for your beautiful little boy, who's the spit of you, lovely little James.
He is, yeah. He's 3 and a bit now. Coming up 3.5 in summer. So he's he's fully walking, talking. He's learning to write as well, and he's spelling words out and things. He's a very, very clever little lad, very bright lad. So we're gonna hopefully keep on top of that and try and channel that in the right way, and not let him become a little brat at school like I was.
Yes, but look how this little brat turned out. I mean, that precociousness has been, you know, channeled into the creative element, you know, the creative side, which clearly you know, what you were doing before wasn't making you happy. So this is sometimes what happens, that children who
Yep.
are really irritating and annoying end up being super successful because they're a bit frustrated. Would you say that was you?
Maybe, yeah. I think it's probably more luck than judgment. And I'm probably still irritating and annoying, but you know, at least I can be irritating and annoying on my own without irritating and annoying anyone else. So I think that's the main thing. But yeah, I guess I'm always someone who's been quite headstrong, and if I wanted to do something, then I'll go out and do it. And if somebody said to me I couldn't, then that was exactly what I was going to do. I never took no for an answer as a child, and you know, if my parents told me not to do something, I was always that kid that went and did it. You know, if you said don't touch something, I was going to touch it, and that was that. So, yeah, maybe that's. I think when you've got a job like this, and if you're doing something creative, and you spend many years with nothing much happening and banging your head against a brick wall, you know, you don't have financial security. Even if you're doing well, things are up and down from month to month and year to year. There's no predictability, and it can all end overnight. So I think having that mentality, I think, of I'm going to do it anyway is probably quite important. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's just while you were saying about the fact that you just wouldn't listen to your parents, that just resonated with me, because I was a fairly disobedient child, shall we say. But, you know, my disobedience actually saved my life. So just a little story here. Growing up in the bush in Africa, snakes were prevalent in the house, and we were killing a snake at least once a week. And my dad, I think I was in the lounge, and my dad said, there's a snake in here, you need to go in your bedroom, because, you know, I need to deal with this. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. So I went to my bedroom. He locked me in the bedroom from the outside, and realized the snake was actually in the bedroom. Fortunately, I thought, well, I'm not staying in this bedroom. I'd rather do something else. So I climbed out the window. Thank God, because there was a spitting cobra in there, and I would not be having this conversation with you now.
Wow.
So there you go. So that's just, you know, being disobedient.
Yeah. Did Dad sort it out in the end then, I'm guessing, or did you have to burn the house down and move?
No, not quite. But, you know, killing snakes was, you know, it was quite an alarming time. And yeah, but that's, you know, that's one of the occupational hazards of growing up in Africa. But it's that whole kind of, well, you've told me to do something. Well, why the hell should I do that? I'm not going to do that. But it saved my life. So I know it's an extreme example. But sometimes I just had a feeling that there was something wrong, and to go. So you've obviously followed.
I can't match that one quite, but I did once punch a wasp, if that counts.
Oh dear, that's funny. So yeah, I've just read your latest book, Closer to You, which I whizzed through. I love your books because they're so easy to read, but because there's the subject matter is so addictive, and you write, you know, your psychological thriller about this girl who falls in love with this guy who's clearly mentally deranged. Unfortunately, and I think we've had this conversation before, a lot of your books tend to resonate with me for all the wrong reasons. Mostly because I've been out with most of the characters in your books, actually. But how do you get to the heads of these really deranged, psychopathic, sociopathic people? And you wrote from a female perspective as well this time, so that was quite interesting. But how do you do that? What does that say about you?
I don't know. I think maybe the acting experience has helped a bit on that front.
So you've been an actor as well, haven't you? Just to clarify.
Yeah, I have. But I think all writers kind of are, really, because you've got to be your character at some point, or at least you've got to kind of channel them, and that's what actors are doing. They're channeling people that they're not, and you know, speaking their words and carrying out their mannerisms. And I think as a writer, you're always doing that anyway. I think it's just perhaps part of the imagination. I think every character and every person at their root has got something that drives them on internally, and they've got a need, something that they're trying to achieve, or something that they're drawn to, that they're looking to do. And I don't think that itself necessarily makes them a bad person, but people make bad decisions in trying to reach those goals and trying to attain those needs. And I think if you're always following that and getting into the character's mind in that sense, you can see how they would think. You're not necessarily thinking, okay, what's the most mucked up thing that they could do here, or how can I make this person particularly evil, you're getting into their mind. I mean, everybody, I mean, even Adolf Hitler in his mind had a perfectly reasonable reason for doing things. Of course, it wasn't reasonable to anybody else, but in his mind, it was perfectly justified and perfectly reasonable. And I think if you look at what the characters' aims are, what their internal needs are, and then think of the different ways they could attain that, and try and go for the least suitable or least sensible one, then you tend to end up with a fairly seemingly unhinged character.
Very dark, though. I mean, you do go to a really dark place, and it does sort of challenge your thought process. And again, I mean, it's Kindle. I'm reading. It's not but it's literally as a page turner, and your books have got that kind of addictive quality about them. And what is this thirst for psychological thrillers? Because I've known you a long time, and obviously your books have become more and more popular, and quite rightly so. But there's a plethora of psychological thrillers out there. I mean, everywhere you go, it's how do you compete with that, or do you even need to, because you're doing so damn well? And B, what is it? Our thirst for this, the kind of badly behaved, or not, but that's not even strong enough, but the mentally unhinged and the thriller kind of thing, and we love it on TV as well. What is it about us? Why do we love this so much?
Well, I mean, when I first wrote a psychological thriller, which is Her Last Tomorrow, I didn't know what a psychological thriller was. I'm notoriously bad with keeping up with what's fashionable even in my own industry, and I had written, as far as I was concerned, a crime novel which was told from the point of view of the person who was the victim, if you like, or the person who was most affected, rather than from the point of view of the police who were investigating it. So I wanted to kind of get into the victim's mind. I was then told apparently that's a psychological thriller, so fine, marketed it as such, and it did well. In terms of other psychological thrillers that are out there, it's not really a case of competing. It's not an industry where competition is even a thing. There are other writers writing other books, but at the end of the day, if you're looking to buy a book and you see 3 that you like, you're probably going to buy all 3. Books are impulse purchases. If you like the look of them, you're going to buy them. It's a bit like music. If you hear a song you like, you'll buy it. You don't necessarily say, it's not like when you're buying a new car, you go out and you're going to buy one every 3 years or whatever. It's, if you see one you like, they're impulse purchases and you go for them. So this idea of competition doesn't really exist. I mean, it perhaps comes in a little bit when there's charts and things like that, and it's nice to kind of one up somebody, but even that's only sort of good friendly joshing, I guess, or always quite good natured. Why psychological thrillers are so popular is, I guess it's because they're usually something that people can relate to. You've normally got quite normal characters in normal situations, and there's one small event that happens which is actually quite massive and turns people's lives upside down. And I think that's probably something that we're all fearful of. When you read sci-fi, you might think, well, okay, it's a nice story, but it's not going to happen. Or if you're reading a serial killer thriller, you think, well, that's such a rare thing, it's a bit distant. Whereas psychological thrillers, I guess, have got the appeal of romance, which is that they're all things that we can actually experience and that can happen to us, and you can really put yourselves in that situation. Like with Her Last Tomorrow, none of us is a perfect parent. You might take your eyes off your child for 30 seconds and then they're gone. And you go from there and you have that what if moment, and you think, well, that's a perfectly normal thing that happens all the time as a parent. But what happens if then you don't find them, and you then end up getting a ransom note from somebody saying you can have your child back, but you've got to kill your wife first? And then you start to get into these what if scenarios. And I think if you've got a normal situation, normal person, and a big what if, then you can come up with a really cracking storyline.
And obviously you're still writing a profuse amount. Do you know quite early on that you've got an idea? So if you're working on a book now, do you suddenly get an idea for another book, say maybe 3 books down the line? Is that how it works? So you kind of
I've got like a digital notebook where I keep all of my ideas, and sometimes it can be a whole plot idea like that. Sometimes it can just be a character or a line or something that interests me and takes my fancy, or it could be a setting. It could be anything, really. And sometimes I'll piece together 6 or 7 of those different things to make a book, and sometimes a whole idea will come to me. But I think lots of people get lots of ideas all the time, and if you write them all down every time you get an idea for something, you'll be amazed how many you actually get. And most of us don't realize, because we forget that we've even had the ideas. It's a bit like dreams. We have them every night, but how many of them can you actually remember from all the nights you've ever been asleep? Probably not very many. But I think if you jot them all down, then you do remember quite a lot. And I'm normally planning probably 3 or 4 books while I'm writing one as well. So by the time I finish writing one, I've then got pretty much at least one fully fledged plan that I can crack on with for the next one.
And do you, obviously you're independently published. Tell us why you decided to go down that route rather than going down the whole publishing route. I mean, obviously it's worked incredibly well for you, but it's not for everybody. Tell us why you decided to do this.
Well, a couple of reasons, really. When I was writing the first book was in 2010, and I'd kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. It was the first book I'd ever written. This Kindle thing had suddenly arrived, and I wasn't quite sure how that all worked. And I thought, well, actually, this is a good way of me getting the book up there, letting people that I don't know discover it and read it, and I can find out if there might be something in this. And it actually took off quite quickly at first, and it made me think that there was actually potential in this as a method of publication in itself. And at that point, it was all very young, and there's a few of us kind of flapping around trying to work out what to do. And I was doing that for the next 5 years before I could actually try and replicate the success and realize that potential that I saw in that method of publication. And, I've had traditional contracts since, but again, I've tried to get out of those as quickly as possible, because they just I can't do the same things as I can when I'm doing it on my own. And I've always been quite an entrepreneurial person and run small businesses and things. And essentially, rather than, a lot of people call it self-publishing, which sounds a little bit tacky and also isn't true, because I'm not doing these things myself. I'm still just doing the writing, and other people are doing the cover design, they're doing the editing. But essentially, I am an author, and I also own the publishing company that publishes my books, and employ the editors, employ the cover designers, and what have you. So I'm using the same cover designer who's done Stephen King and John le Carré's books. I'm using
just threw that in.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm using editors that have worked for HarperCollins and Penguin, Simon & Schuster, and places like that. So the end product is, I've always thought, should be exactly the same as anything you'd pick up off the shelves in any bookstore. So for me, that's always been the aim, to get that professional product, but having complete control over that as well, and trying to be entrepreneurial about it. And it's got loads of different benefits. You can do things whenever you want to. You can release a book, you can change the dates, you can go in and tweak the cover anytime you like. Having that kind of control is far better than, with traditional publishers taking 18 months to put a fully finished book out, whereas I can get it out there the same day.
Which is amazing. And it's interesting that you say that you've got this huge team behind you, because I've read books by authors who are, contracted to publishers, and they've not been as well written, and certainly not as well edited as yours. And I'm like the grammar police. I'm always looking for mistakes. and it's shocking. I've actually seen this in books that are, from respected publishers. And I think, how on earth has a mistake got through? What are these editors paid for? So it's interesting, you've got this. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, there always will be. There always will be. If you've got 100,000 word novel, then even if it's 99% perfect, there's going to be 1,000 mistakes. So if it's 99.9% perfect, there's going to be 100 mistakes. So even 10 mistakes, you still got a book that is 99.99% perfect. So it's always going to be something. And a lot of the time as well, it can be stylistic. I mean, sometimes I've had emails from readers who are picking out grammatical errors in characters' dialogue. And you think, well, people don't speak grammatically. I don't speak grammatically. I always try and make sure that characters are realistic and they speak how people actually speak. And when people talk, they often end a sentence on a preposition, for example, whereas, you might try and avoid that in normal prose. So yeah, there's lots of different ways of looking at it. And I think as long as you're hiring the right editors and proofreaders and they're doing a job the best they can and you're getting a good story out there, that's what people are buying the books for, essentially.
Absolutely. And the podcast, I mean, that has been amazing. Would you have ever foreseen the success, and why did this come about?
Well, no, I never kind of foresee success in anything. Obviously hope for it and try to do the best we can. And if it's successful, then great. But yeah, Bob and I had the idea for Partners in Crime. It was I guess originally we only live about half a mile away from each other, and we're both crime writers, and we quite often meet up for coffee or a beer and talk about writing and have a laugh and joke about. And we filmed it one time for a YouTube video. Just thought that might be quite interesting. Our readers might like to see it. And it went down really well. And we thought, well, let's turn this into a podcast. Let's make it a regular thing. And we do. Obviously now it's a bit different on lockdown. We're doing things remotely like this. But we, in normal times, he will come around to mine. I've got a little studio here, and we'll do the podcast together. We'll have a little chat for half an hour. Quite often we don't even touch on crime fiction or books. We can just be, talking about what's been going on generally recently. It's good fun. It's light-hearted. We have a bit of banter and a joke, and it's all good fun. And we did a live episode recently. We
saw that.
We had I say we. Bob actually ended up having coronavirus. So I had to present the live episode on my own. It was the first time it was to celebrate our 100th episode. It was the first time I'd ever had to present solo. And I was doing it for the 100th anniversary edition live and on video. So it was,
well, I have to say,
a challenge.
But you smashed it. It was absolutely fantastic. It really was. So how do we find the podcast?
Partners in Crime is available basically anywhere that you get your podcast. So from any podcast app, or if you go to partnersincrime.online, it's available there as well.
It's a cracking podcast. And
thank you.
So tell us what book's next, and how we can get hold of you as well.
Well, I'm working on the first book in a new series at the moment, which is quite location specific. So it was planned to be something a bit different in terms of not just being digital, but was going to be quite a lot going on PR-wise in that area, and a lot of physical launch stuff. But of course, that's all on hold now. So I'm still writing the book. I'm probably going to write the first 2 or 3 before we're going to be able to actually launch the first one, because we need to be at that location to do it. In the meantime, still working on another Night in Culver House, the 10th book in that series. I've got plans for lots of others as well, psychological thrillers and all sorts going on. Got 2 in the Sam Barker series that are out, and the 3rd one is being planned. So yeah, lots going on. In terms of
busy.
Sorry?
So busy.
Yes, well,
you're so busy. You never stop.
Better busy than bored. And you don't want to say me when I'm bored. In terms of getting hold of me. Twitter, I'm at Adam Croft. Facebook, I think the page is Adam Croft Books. Also Instagram is Adam Croft Books. And if you head over to adamcroft.net, then you can get a couple of my short stories for free and see if you like them.
What's not to like about that? Honestly, it's been such a pleasure, and you're so inspirational. As I said, I've known you a long time now. Watching the success of, how many books is it now you've written?
I think 30 or 31.
Wow. In how many years? 10 years or so.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah. So, and lots more to come. I'm so excited. Obviously, your podcast is amazing. Thank you for being on my first isolation interview.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I must say, I loved Close to You, which is available on Amazon, which I finished last night at 3 o'clock in the morning because I just couldn't put it down. So yeah, honestly, you're just such a joy to interview, such a lovely person to know. I'm privileged to call you my friend, and such a successful author. And so deserves. So Adam Croft, thank you so much. And if you want to catch this podcast, we'll be on iTunes and Spotify and Spreaker. I've got a YouTube channel, Nancy Stevens Arts and Style. And I hope you've enjoyed, the first isolation interview with Adam Croft, best-selling author. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.